In the mid-80s, I discovered New York subway art via a book called Subway Art. This was taken in 1997, age 13, on a train tracks in my hometown of Windsor. We got deep into hip-hop, as you can see from the get-up. A few years later, we started to travel to other towns in the area to meet and paint with graffiti writers. I painted my first train in 1988, and by the early 90s, we were beginning to make a name for ourselves in London. We all had our own motivation for writing graffiti, and for me, a sense of adventure and the camaraderie was what drove me. Painting missions were usually after hours, giving us a particular perspective of the city by night, which definitely shaped how I relate to cities now. Like a fox, the city was ours, and the trains were our prey. But after all the fun, the party had to end. Anyone who knows anything about West African parents knew the drama that I had to deal with, especially when my shenanigans made the local papers. Overnight, I became the one my aunties told all my cousins not to hang out with. Soon after, I went on to complete an illustration degree, and for the following 2 decades, I got involved in community arts projects, secondary school teaching, and also became a father. Oh, and more graffiti. But that's our little secret, yeah? Graffiti in my 30s had evolved. We now lived in a globalized world, made smaller by social media. I now saw graffiti as my vehicle to travel the world and embed myself in other cultures. This is a subculture where I could travel anywhere in the world and within hours find myself collaborating on artwork with people I've only just met. In 2015, I picked up oil paints after a lengthy creative block. I had always painted characters on walls, so portraiture was a natural evolution for me. I eventually outgrew my setup at home and needed a larger workspace. Artist studios in London are often expensive and have lengthy waiting lists. I decided to fully focus on painting the portraits in the streets. I combined my approach to graffiti and fused it with what I was doing with oil paints. I set out with a ladder, a bag, and a vision to use the streets as my studio. Later that year, I traveled to Ghana, the homeland of my parents, and painted not far from my family home. One night after I just finished painting, an elder called me over. He thanked me and said this to me: "Remember home." I thought deeply about those words for some time after. Where was home? Undoubtedly, he was referring to Ghana, where I had spent my formative years. But in the UK, I'd also lived in the Midlands, Hampshire, Berkshire, Manchester, and London. The only constant was myself, and I took it that what he meant was, remember the essence of who I was. It was a long overdue trip. We had a great time, in no small part due to the hospitality of my friend Mary. Unbeknown to her, when I got home, I painted a portrait of her in East London as a thank you. Over the following months, I continued to paint other women in my family and circle of friends, similarly as an act of appreciation and gratitude. From these paintings, the You Are Enough series evolved. It was all very organic, but it was also wanted to produce a coherent body of work that you would have to travel across the city to see in its entirety. I posted the subject's backstories on social media to continue the conversation online. Each of the 10 portraits of real women with real stories who had triumphed over adversity. The project touched on pressing societal issues that included mental health, sexual violence, and FGM. I wanted to empower and inspire, just as these women had inspired me. A body of work to simply remind us all that striving to be our authentic self was enough. The feedback was humbling, and the project changed the trajectory of my practice. There's a Nina Simone quote from the documentary What Happened, Miss Simone, in which she says that an artist's duty is to reflect the times. I've lived a nomadic life and been blessed to meet so many interesting and inspirational people. I wanted to tell these people's stories with the universality of portraiture infused with the work of my own social values. What if we use public spaces to sell inspiration? What if these spaces projected our narratives to the world? I painted this portrait of Mimi in Penge. The painting was warmly received by the community, and I got into some really inspiring conversations. Halfway through painting the mural, a lady approached me and let me know she hated what I was doing, and she was going to go over the painting. I'm used to my work not even seeing the light of day, as you've seen. But when you make work that's bigger than yourself, you're not motivated by approval. Following Mimi, I painted fungi 5 minutes down the road in Bruce Grove. The wall is directly opposite a pub, with several local people were standing outside the pub watching me for the 3 days I was painting. It was unnerving, and I half expected it to kick off. On the last day, a woman who was standing in the group came over to us. I was thinking to myself, here we go. She said that the men had been watching the process of the work and were curious as to who it was. They loved what I was doing and were too shy to come over and speak to me. The lady talked about the positive representation for the young people in the local area, especially with how the area was viewed since the 2011 riots. The insights you get from the community over a few days painting is invaluable. Recently, the national conversation was very much about Brexit and immigration. But a narrative coming from some quarters was not one that I recognised. I wanted to show the human face of the immigrants who had made the UK their home. The first mural was in Brixton, where I painted a portrait of Michael, who had been working in the community for over 2 decades. Michael currently works in the market directly opposite the painting. The market traders and many people in the community were angry at the gentrification of the area. In fact, the traders directly in front of the mural refused to engage with me for the first few days. One of my team got talking to her and asked her how she thought I was getting paid for the mural. She's completely different when she realised I wasn't getting paid to paint.
I think painting in the street, you come to expect the unexpected. However, painting in Brixton has been something else. Everything you can imagine to happen while I've been painting has happened. It's been an experience. I think this painting's been really special for me because Michael has to see this painting every single day when he comes to work. I love the idea somebody might be here in Brixton, want to spend a penny, see the painting in the corner of their eye, and then turn around to go and use the toilet and be like, oh.
So we take a photo of you in front of the painting. Do it exactly the same as the top, but obviously exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Okay then, yeah. I can do that.
One of my concerns was that the subject is right. Someone that really represents the temperature and the aspirations and the mind of the people. And everyone has been like, yeah, that's the right guy. You know, this guy has been working tirelessly in our community for years. You know, we're talking about over 2 decades.
Other subjects include acclaimed artist Hassan Ajaj, who I painted a stone's throw away from his studio, and also painted Syrian refugee Maya Ghazal in East London. Art is my key to travel the world, and in different contexts, the art presents different challenges. How public space is viewed differs from place to place. Being flexible with my process or being diligent whilst navigating community dynamics are some of the things I take into consideration. For instance, in Casablanca, Morocco, it is forbidden to paint without authorization from the town hall. On a recent visit, we tried to secure a wall, but it took 2 days to get the green light, by which time I was literally about to leave to go to the station. The pressure was on, but I managed to paint this portrait of Ahmed once we'd got permission, who I had only met 4 days before rushing to get the train. I painted in Dharavi, Mumbai, India. Dharavi was the setting of the acclaimed movie Slumdog Millionaire. Here I painted Shiva and Raja, 2 dope dancers from the local Slum Gods hip-hop collective. I'm enfazed by people watching, but I didn't fully appreciate what it meant to paint in one of the most densely populated areas in the world. I think I stepped on at least one person's big toe every time I stepped back to look at what I was doing. The paintings raised a few eyebrows amongst some of the older boys who completely covered the paintings with mud out of jealousy once I'd left. I try to see walls in my life not as obstacles, but as potentials for opportunity. I see walls as an opportunity to tell other people's stories.